Let's pick things up there with tonight's political insider. Joining me, Adam Wollner, correspondent for National Journal's Hotline 2016. Adam, it's the eve of the New York primary. What's at stake tomorrow?
Right, so tomorrow in the New York primary, both frontrunners, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton for their respective parties, will be looking to kind of regain their footing here after a rough April so far. Both candidates have been handed a string of defeats, and we've had a little bit of a lull in the primary calendar. This will actually be the first contest in 10 days on either side. But New York is the home state for both Trump and Clinton, and they are the favorites coming into this. All the polls have them up by double digits over their opponents. For Trump, the key for him will be, can he take all 95 delegates that are at stake in New York? The delegates are allocated both at the statewide level and at the congressional district level. So he's going to try and collect as many delegates as he can to kind of wipe out some of the defeats he suffered recently in Wisconsin, Colorado, Wyoming. And for Hillary Clinton, if she's able to maintain a double-digit advantage, she'll walk away with a good chunk of the 247 delegates available on the Democratic side.
All right, meanwhile, Adam, Donald Trump continues to hammer what he calls a rigged system. He got some more ammunition over the weekend. Tell me what happened in Wyoming.
Right, so Wyoming is similar to what we saw in Colorado the weekend before, where they didn't hold a traditional primary election or a caucus where just an everyday voter can come in and cast a ballot for their candidate. Instead, delegates in these states are elected directly at statewide conventions. So in Wyoming, there were 14 delegates up for stake. Or up for grabs, excuse me, and the Cruz campaign was able to get his supporters into all 14 of these delegate slots, meaning that on that first ballot at the Republican National Convention in Cleveland this summer, they're all going to be voting for Ted Cruz, and Cruz also took 9 of the 12 delegates that were available at county conventions in Wyoming last month. So you've heard Donald Trump rail against this as a rigged system when the voters don't get to weigh in through a traditional election process, but simply put, the Cruz campaign just out-organized both Donald Trump and John Kasich in Wyoming this weekend.
You're exactly right. The key here is organization. The National Journal reports to date, Trump has spent more on jet fuel than on staff and consultants, but the balance appears to be shifting. Trump's added some real clout to his team. And let me say something else. It's not that the system is rigged. He just doesn't know the rules. That's not coming from me. That's what Rush Limbaugh says. So tell me about what Trump is doing now to try to shore up his own base.
Right, so after suffering some of these delegate defeats, he brought on 2 new high-profile campaign strategists, one of which being Paul Manafort, who's a veteran Republican strategist. He is now the quote-unquote convention manager for the campaign, although some people might suggest he's the new campaign manager. And then they also brought on Scott Walker's former campaign manager, Rick Wiley. He's also a former political director at the RNC. So by bringing in kind of 2 seasoned operatives, the Trump campaign, I think, realizes that they're kind of behind the 8 ball on some of this delegate wrangling, but they still maintain that they'll be able to reach that magic number of 1237, the majority of the delegates needed to clinch the nomination before the national convention.
Let's switch gears now to the Democrats. There's been a lot of focus on super PACs recently by Bernie Sanders. His supporters showered a Clinton motorcade with $1 bills as she drove to a fundraiser with actor George Clooney in Los Angeles over the weekend. The tickets cost more than $330,000 per person. Clooney called the money obscene, but says most of it is not for Clinton.
The overwhelming amount of money that we're raising, and it is a lot, but the overwhelming amount of the money that we're raising is not going to Hillary to run for president. It's going to the down ticket. It's going to the congressmen and senators to try to take back Congress.
Clooney says that will allow Democrats to retake the Senate, get a liberal confirmed on the Supreme Court, and overturn Citizens United. What do you make all of this, Adam?
Yeah, well, I think it kind of speaks to 2 things. One being that Bernie Sanders has really pushed this debate on the Democratic side to the left, where campaign finance is being an issue that's regularly discussed on the campaign trail. But also shows that a lot of liberals who might align with Bernie Sanders ideologically, they might fear the impact he could have at the top of the ticket, especially when the Senate and a lot of House seats could be in play this fall as well. So I think George Clooney and other liberals who are supporting Hillary Clinton, they may agree with Senator Sanders on a lot of issues, but they think Hillary Clinton would be stronger at the top of the ticket and think that she has done more and can do even more to ensure that Democrats take back the Senate this fall, potentially make significant gains in the House, and then, of course, there's that opening on the Supreme Court that liberals would love to fill.
Adam, before you go, I'd like to hit on one more political hot potato. Bernie Sanders is backing a bill that would let Americans sue Saudi Arabia over the 9/11 terrorist attacks. He spoke about it on the Today Show. What's the play here?
Right, so this is an issue that we haven't really heard either candidate talk about too much. And in fact, on Sunday, both Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders didn't really take a position on it, but by Sunday night, both expressed their support for this bill. And this actually puts them at odds with the Obama administration, but puts them in line with New York Senator Chuck Schumer, who is the co-sponsor of this bill, and of course, many of the families of 9/11 victims who have really been pushing this for a long time. So really for both Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton on the eve of the New York primary, they don't want to be seen as going against the wishes of the victims from the 9/11 attacks.
We'll keep an eye on this. Adam Wollner, correspondent for National Journal's Hotline 2016, and it is indeed a hotline. Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Morris.